My name is Danielle Smith and I'm the project coordinator for the Onrus Catchment to Coast River Restoration and Rehabilitation Project. The Onrus River system is located in Hermanus, about 120 kilometers from Cape Town. It begins high up in the Babylonstoren and Klein River Mountains and flows roughly 17 kilometers before reaching the ocean at Onrus. Although it is a relatively small system, it plays an important role as it passes through private land, the De Bos Dam, and into an estuary valued for recreation, tourism, and local identity. Since the dam was built in 1976, the river has been heavily influenced by development and hasn't really been managed in a holistic way. At the heart of the system lies the Palmiet wetland, which acts as the river's natural filter, maintaining both water quantity and quality in the estuary. The Onrus is also a flash flood system where heavy rainfall upstream can lead to sudden floods downstream, a risk that's increasing with climate change. However, and fittingly, the name Onrus means restless in Afrikaans, reflecting its turbulent and unpredictable nature, so the name actually says it all. Let me start by explaining the philosophy behind this project. A catchment to coast approach recognizes that what happens in the upper catchment directly affects everything downstream, our rivers, wetlands, and estuary. That is why we need to manage the entire system and as one connected landscape. With this in mind, the Overstrand municipality launched the Onrus Catchment to Coast River Restoration and Rehabilitation Project, which looks at the whole river system from the mountains through the dam and the wetland all the way to the sea. A key focus is the Onrus peatland wetland, which has suffered serious degradation over many years. To address this effectively, the project is being rolled out in phases from the upper catchment through the dam and middle catchment down to the wetland and estuary. While ecological recovery is our goal, it is also important to consider local economic realities as land and water use are closely linked to livelihoods. Let's take a closer look at the De Bos Dam and the surrounding area. Built in 1976, the dam remains the main water source for the Greater Hermanus area, supported by several boreholes. At the time, water allocations were set for human use way before today's Water Act, and the needs of the downstream peat wetland were not considered. The Yammelanarde Valley is a thriving farming and a wine-producing region, and has since expanded, placing more pressure on the river through irrigation, and in some cases over-abstraction, now under investigation by BOCMA. Decades of high water use, limited ecological releases, and a changing climate have left the wetland degraded. Drying peat has allowed alien plants to spread, increasing drought, flood, and fire risks. Together, human activity and climate impacts have significantly stressed the Onrus River system, underscoring the urgency of our restoration efforts.
Hi, I'm Liesl de Villiers. I'm the Division Manager for the Overstrand Municipality's Environmental Management and Conservation Division. We are here in the Overstrand Municipality in the Yammelanarde Valley, and this is the Onrus peat wetland. The Onrus peat wetland is around 10,000 years old, covering or used to cover 58 hectares and was dominated by endemic palmiet. It's the third oldest and deepest peatland in South Africa and acts as the river system's natural filter, maintaining water quality, water flow and flood regulation. Decades of drying caused by the De Bos Dam's agricultural water use, alien plants and past fires left the peat vulnerable to subsurface fires, including the extraordinary 2019 underground fire that burned for nearly 4 months. I always tell the story, and I always find it so fascinating. When I stepped out of the car, it smelled exactly like peat whiskey. That was the moment I realized that the Onrus wetland is in fact a peatland. Of course, later scientifically confirmed by peat specialists Dr. Piet Louis Groenling and Althea Groenling, which also drew both national and international attention. Years of degradation meant that when a massive flood in September 23 dropped over 140 millimeters of rain in 24 hours in the catchment alone, the wetland could no longer buffer the flow. Large sections of peat and palmiet were washed downstream, damaging infrastructure, contaminating water supplies, and leaving Hermanus without water for 5 days. The cost of repairs now runs into millions, compared to the modest investment that could have strengthened the wetland beforehand, as we believe that it would have reduced the damage we experienced. While lost peat cannot be replaced, rehabilitating the wetland remains critical to reduce future flood damage, protect biodiversity, and sustain the catchment as climate change drives more extreme events. Our partnership with ICLEI Africa, a global network of local governments focused on sustainability, has been instrumental connecting us to international funders, including the United Nations Environmental Programme, or UNEP, and global advocacy platforms. This led to securing the UNEP Generation Restoration funding, which supported strategic planning across the catchment. Key deliverables include a situation assessment of rivers, wetlands, and the estuary, a sustainable funding model, an Onrus estuary maintenance management plan, a wetland rehabilitation plan, and alien invasive species clearing plan, lessons learned and guideline document, and community awareness campaigns to engage stakeholders in restoration efforts. Significant advocacy milestones were achieved with UNEP support. At COP16 in Colombia in October 2024, we shared lessons from the Onrus project and presented it at a case study in integrated catchment and wetland restoration. In March 2025, a UNEP workshop in Cape Town marked a key moment to reflect on the Generation Restoration Project's progress, reaffirming the role of cities in driving nature-based solutions and explore ways to maintain momentum as the project concludes at the end of September 2025. The workshop also included a field visit to this beautiful Onrus. In July 2025, at the AMSEN Breakfast Dialogue in Nairobi, we were engaged with African ministers on restoration financing and policy, showcasing this project as a replicable model. At Ramsar COP15 in Zimbabwe, the project was recognized by UNEP leadership as a proactive local initiative, and we presented our peat wetland and overall catchment rehabilitation efforts, highlighting lessons from the fire and flood events and the importance of wetlands for biodiversity, water security, and climate adaptation. So, the UNEP funding has been critical in enabling the project plan, implement, and share best practices for catchment to coast restoration while raising international awareness and visibility of this Onrus Catchment to Coast project. In addition to UNEP's support, several initiatives has highlighted the Onrus Catchment to Coast project's impact, innovation, and knowledge sharing, such as Sandy's 4th catchment base in Daba. We hosted a bus tour showcasing the project and its restoration efforts, including a filmed video opportunity. The project was also presented as a case study at a technical ecological infrastructure meeting, demonstrating the value of investing in green infrastructure. Academic collaboration with SciencePo through ICLEI generated research on ecological restoration, while an international delegation from South Korea visited to learn from our experiences. We're also in the process of exploring a pilot biomass demonstration project, while the Greater Catchment to Coast project has been presented globally via the Institute for Environmental Science, or IES, which is a UK-based organization's webinar on restoration methods and blue carbon, the Conservation at Work Symposium, as well as the Western Cape Disaster Risk Resilience Conference, highlighting approaches to flood mitigation, climate resilience, and ecosystem restoration. These activities enhance the project's visibility nationally and internationally, foster knowledge exchange, strengthen partnerships, and contribute to best practices in catchment to coast restoration.
We have now moved downstream to the Onrus catchment, the Onrus estuary. So the Onrus estuary and town are popular recreational and holiday destinations, adding pressure from tourism, coastal development, and reduced freshwater flow from the Depos Dam. The estuary itself is small, about 15 hectares, and naturally flushes poorly. Although it ranks low in national conservation importance, it's locally vital for recreation and supports birds, fish, and indigenous vegetation. Years of human impact, including alien plant invasion, habitat modification from the dam, nutrient runoff, and reduced flows have left the system degraded. The September 2023 Heritage Day flood worsened conditions dramatically, depositing heavy sediment, destroying habitat, and reducing biodiversity to the point that the estuary is now classified as non-functional. Flood risk to the town remains high, as new sandbanks could channel future floods into the residential areas behind us. To address this, we are currently exploring a maintenance management plan under the UNEP Generation Restoration Project to guide careful dredging and long-term management, as the estuary's decline underscores the urgent need for catchment-wide rehabilitation to protect both ecosystems and the Onrus community. The UNEP Generation Restoration funding transformed into a catalytic grant by not only supporting the initial project activities but also leveraging broader support, generating co-funding and attracting sustained interest. The Breede Olifants Catchment Management Agency, or BOCMA, is the lead authority for water management in the Breede Gourit area. Through Generation Restoration funding that further enabled the steering committee, BOCMA joined the Onrus Catchment to Coast Steering Committee and committed $5 million over 3 years to clear alien invasive plants in the catchment. The White Desert Foundation, which is a UK-based charity launched by the White Desert Company, was introduced to the Onrus Catchment to Coast project by DETB, a steering committee member. The funding supports a palmite nursery for carbon sequestration and riverbank rehabilitation. Palmite, an indigenous river plant, stores significant carbon while aiding ecological restoration. The project is one of the first 3 initiatives funded by the White Desert Foundation, highlighting the Generation Restoration grant's catalytic role in attracting international support. Under the UNEP Generation Restoration Project, the Onrus Catchment to Coast team mapped alien invasive plants and studied catchment hydrology, revealing significant water loss from infestations. Clearing alien invasive plants will improve water quality flow and ecosystem services. A demonstration site on municipal land will showcase this approach, which can be replicated across the surrounding farms. The DFFE offered to support this project by providing herbicide assistance, while the project will also assist landowners to comply with biodiversity and fire management legislation. Going forward, we will continue to restore and rehabilitate the Onrus catchment ecosystem, ensuring healthier rivers, wetlands and estuaries for people and nature.
Standing here at the mouth of the Onrus estuary, with the sea just beyond the horizon, the project's 5 key objectives are the mitigating effects of climate change to improve the water quality in the river, the wetland and the estuary system behind us, enhancing water quantity and security, protecting our ecosystems and biodiversity, safeguarding habitats for flora and fauna, and reducing the flood risk and erosion, especially from high-flow events.